have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once. I am one of those melodramatic fools, neurotic to the bone, no doubt about it. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me. It all keeps adding up. I think I'm cracking up. Am I just paranoid? Am I just stoned?
Welcome to the Jeb Reith Show Unleashed podcast, episode number 19. We're still having a typical central New York weather, so we are safely ensconced in the inner sanctum in the secret, undisclosed central New York location.
Do you get plowing?
No.
See, I do, and I've made up because last year stunk.
Yeah.
It was a good weather. It was a good winter.
Yeah.
So I'm making up for what I paid last year, this year, along with this year's.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, when I came through your neighborhood, one of the plow guys is illegally pushing snow across the road.
You can't do that.
No, he did it like 5 times. I noticed coming in. So
was it a tractor? Or
I didn't
was it
see
a
him.
truck?
It's just you could see what's left over. It looks like a truck though, because one of them's pushed way back on somebody's yard. It's not good. You can't do that. No, we have neighbors, thankfully, who have snow blowers, and they usually snow blow us out, which is very nice. Very nice. If both cars are there, though, I have to do between the cars, but whatever. I mean, it's very, very nice of them to do. Our Yahoo of the Week, the Kansas City Chiefs, are the Yahoos of the Week. Man, what an egg. Although I picked the Eagles to win because of their defense. They had the best defense in the NFL, and they showed it. And they're going to be set up for next year, too, so they're going to be tough to beat. The Super Bowl was, the game itself was a yawner. Of course, I thought the commercials were, I liked the Matt Damon commercial.
I might have missed that one.
With David Beckham.
I didn't see that one.
So he's David Beckham's brother in America. It was just funny. It was the writing was very funny.
Of the ones I saw, I laughed, belly laughed at Seal.
I thought that was disturbing.
Oh, it was very disturbing, but it was hilarious at the same time.
That was like, you got what?
But the kicker was him on the boat.
Yeah, at the end, yeah. Yeah, that was good.
It's a nice seal.
Yeah. That was disturbing, man. That image, holy cow.
Now, if you followed him during COVID, you would see he doesn't take himself seriously, and he's got a very good sense of humor. He was actually very funny, and he would sit in his kitchen in his bathrobe and just sing.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I like his voice.
Yes.
I always liked him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was funny when he said, that's a nice seal.
I think the winner goes to Michelob Ultra.
Which one was that?
It was the one. It was early in they had a couple of them, but it was the one early in the. Was it Michelob Ultra, or was it Mountain Dew? See, I should have wrote it down.
Mountain Dew had all the different characters in it.
I think that might have been it. They leaked one early, and it might have been the Mountain Dew one.
See, the interesting thing is, none of us remember the product. Nope. Hardly ever. I thought the Lilo and Stitch thing was kind of funny. Or Stitch, Lilo and Stitch. That was kind of funny. We used to watch that when my kids were little.
It's a live action one coming out.
Yeah, and I thought that was cute. The other ones, it was forgettable. It was a forgettable crop. Now, let's talk about the halftime show, because rap's not my thing, but number one, he's very good. He is very good, Kendrick Lamar.
He's the kind. I guess the problem, if there was any problem, is he's not. Boy, to say the word mainstream, it's not really, but he is, but he isn't.
Yeah, he's not Jay-Z. He's not Eminem. He's not somebody that really attracts an older white audience.
Yes.
He just isn't. But I thought the halftime show was very well done. Like I said, it's not my thing. I like Eminem. I like Snoop. I like old school rappers. I don't know enough about Kendrick Lamar, except he won 4 Grammys the other night. So, but I thought it was very well done. I thought it was put on really well. And if you don't like it, you don't like that stuff, you don't like it.
And you have to kind of know the backstory of that whole thing was there was a lot of dissing to Drake because that whole Not Like Us is a diss track.
Oh, okay.
They were going back and forth a couple years ago making diss tracks, and Kendrick Lamar came out the victor. So all of the imagery you see, like him on the blacktop, that's it's the whole street cred thing. Serena Williams dated Drake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she came out and danced during the big song.
Yeah. So who is the woman singing?
SZA, SZA, straight.
Very good.
Yes, and those were the mainstream songs that they played on the radio. Those were the most. I mean, they played, TV. The last song he did, TV, is a great song. But it's a very acquired rap taste because it's not the bumpin' fun party music.
Right.
It's the more cerebral. You got to think about what he's saying, kind of like Common and Nas and guys like that.
Okay.
That's the next generation of that. The Roots, Nas, Common, those kind of intelligent rap.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they use the vernacular that rappers do.
Sure.
Because it's the culture.
Right.
But if you dig in and actually read what he's saying, and a lot of it is repetitive, but there's a reason they gave him a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was well done.
And
like
now I adore John Batiste.
Yeah, he was great.
He's autistic. He is a genius at music. If you've ever seen any online, he does those things where they'll play him a part of a song without the music, and he fills it in. So he did like a Green Day song once.
Wow.
And he's just, when he's listening to it, you can see his mind work when he's at the piano. So, and I get it. They're in New Orleans. It was a jazzy national anthem.
I loved the piano part.
I didn't think there was anything disrespectful with it.
No, of course not. No.
Yes, it was pre-recorded.
Right.
Because you could tell by his hands.
Yeah.
But it's
New Orleans. So, he kind of targeted that New Orleans audience. I thought the piano part was brilliant.
Yes.
Just brilliant. I liked it. And I liked America the Beautiful. I liked it all.
Lauren Dangle and Trombone Shorty.
Yeah.
Trombone Shorty's he's been at Jazz Fest, Frank's Jazz Fest.
Yep. No, I thought it was great. I did. I thought the whole thing was great except the game. The game was a letdown.
Music, like movies, like anything else, it's all on taste. It's all what
Right.
It's all subjective.
Right. I agree completely. And, they're aiming for a certain demographic during the Super Bowl, and that's why they do the people or feature the people that they do. The one other thing that I thought was interesting was how fast the crowd turned on Taylor Swift. Holy cow.
I don't know if that was more politically or because there were a lot of Eagles fans there.
Yeah, there were. Yes, there were. And, Kelsey did nothing during the game. He had a couple catches. I think that they only showed Trump once. They only showed Taylor Swift once. So I knew Fox News, well, that's not Fox News, Fox Sports. I knew they weren't going to show Swift at all unless Kelsey scored a touchdown. But to not show Trump again was interesting. I wonder if he left right away.
He left just before the Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, he did?
I think.
Okay.
Or during it. Yeah, he was gone.
It's interesting because he hates Taylor Swift and he hates the Eagles because the Eagles stood him up when he was president.
Yes.
They won the Super Bowl. He didn't go. And it'll be interesting to see if they go this time.
It's surprising that he's the first sitting president to go to a Super Bowl.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That was like they referenced that a couple times. So that was interesting to me.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Especially Obama being such a sports guy.
Yeah.
Obama was.
Yeah. I think some people are upset that he saluted during the national anthem. He's commander-in-chief. So, and it was a nice salute, by the way.
Yes.
So, I have no problem with that.
Listen, there's people I was having this conversation with somebody. There's people that are going to pick apart everything.
Oh, yeah.
That he does, and just like any politician or in that position.
Right. And I don't like the guy at all. But, give me a break. He's the commander-in-chief. Of course he's going to salute. I'm kind of proud of him that he saluted. Other presidents would just put their hand over their heart or whatever. So, it's all just blah, blah, blah. But that's my Super Bowl take. It was a terrible game, which is too bad. You always want to see an exciting game. But I did pick the Eagles beforehand, and it's their defense, and defense wins championships, and they're going to be tough again next year. So, and I'm happy to see Saquon Barkley do well. I'm a huge Giants fan, like you are, and
Yep.
it was nice to see him do well with it's a team that actually has an offensive line.
And at the beginning of the season, you poo-poo it and you hate the guy, and then you see that there was those games where he could have broken records, but he let other younger players play. He's the real deal.
Class
He's going to be. Yep. Now talking about football, the biggest travesty of the week is Eli Manning not being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I didn't think he'd get in first time. He'll get in, but I don't think I don't think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, frankly, but I think he'll get in eventually. His brother was dominant. I don't think Eli was ever dominant in any year. He was very, very solid. Right, exactly. Also, what's interesting, the next big sport is girls flag football, and that was a good commercial too.
Very.
And that is a growing sport now across the country, and high schools are finally recognizing it as a varsity sport. So I'd love to see it here in Central New York. You have a very large number of very healthy girls' athletic programs in this area. Love to see flag football become. My son played flag when he was young, and it's great to watch. And there's no hitting and all that stuff, and I think it's great. So
it's athleticism.
Yes, happy to see that, and would love to see.
That was another good commercial talking about sports. Is the William Dafoe
yes,
pickleball
very
commercial.
good. That's right. Yes, very good. Now, who is it for?
Don't know. No idea.
No idea.
Yeah, I can't
no
remember.
idea. Yep, very good. It was very funny. Yeah, most of these commercials you just don't even know who they're for. Half of them, a couple of them, had the whole commercial, and then like at the end was the product.
Yeah,
like just a few seconds on the screen, which I thought was really interesting.
Something that I didn't know was coming, and it looks great, is the new Jurassic World movie.
Yeah,
it's
that does
almost
look great.
going back to the original.
Yeah. It said that this is where they put the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to watch.
And I've liked all of those, even the world movies.
Yeah, But I mean, the first couple, of course, were because they were so brand new. The first one was so good.
Yeah.
Because of all the new stuff that was in it, and people were it was like, wow.
And that scene where they're where the dinosaurs are going down, and like Jimmy Buffett's in the scene,
right?
In Margaritaville,
right? Yeah, so it'll be good. It'll be interesting to see. Now, we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk to the superintendent of the Syracuse School District about cell phones and about the president wanting to get rid of the Department of Education and what that'll mean for urban districts. And then we have a back in the day feature that I've been trying to put together for quite some time. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You'll have to listen for that. So here we go. A very special guest on the podcast today. We're very happy to be joined by Syracuse School Superintendent Anthony Davis. Superintendent, how are you today?
Well, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. I was looking at your bio. I don't think there's anybody in this area who knows Syracuse schools better than you do. You've been there since 1986. Is that right?
In a working capacity, I was here before that as a student.
There's nobody that knows this district better than you. I'll tell you that. Holy cow. So let's talk about cell phones. That's the big issue, for all the school districts in New York State, certainly now, because of what Governor Hochul has decided to do. First, I mean, do you see cell phones as an unnecessary distraction in class?
It definitely is a distraction in schools. Yeah, without a doubt. So there's no argument there.
So how then are we going to go about this? I mean, it's such a big ask for teachers and, superintendents and principals.
It is. And I think it's primarily about communications. We have to make sure that everybody at least understands the reasoning behind why we want to change the process. Or, we want to make sure that people are not in a position where messages are happening, where kids are getting upset in school settings, and things like that could be avoided if phones weren't so readily available throughout the day.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and social media, I mean, we're not even going to start with that. And its effect on young people is just, it can be terrible. It can be good, but it can be terrible. I guess the main argument for allowing them to have cell phones in class is if the parents need to reach them, if something really seriously bad happens in a school, they can alert, people. But I mean, you and I grew up in a time where there was no cell phones in school, obviously, and if parents need to get a hold of us, they got a hold of us.
Absolutely. You can still go through the schools, and we would make that known to everyone. And quite honestly, we have a couple of schools already just doing some piloting programs where those particular communities have figured it out. They know exactly how they're going to deal with it, and it's going well. And then you have other communities where the families or those conversations have not happened yet. So right now it's more about communication than anything.
What's been the reaction, both from parents and from students?
Students are not interested in this initiative at all. students are not in favor of this move. I think there's mixed emotion with parents. I think the staff definitely wants this to happen because it's less distractions in classrooms and buildings. But I think parents have mixed emotions because they do want the ability to be able to get a hold of their child at any time. And unfortunately, there's different reasons for that.
Right. Unfortunately, it's true. So do you have any kind of framework in mind of how you want to handle this? Will it be school by school or will it be district-wide?
I think it's going to be a combination. So what we'll end up doing is those places that's piloted, we won't bother those buildings. We'll let them continue what they're doing because they found a sweet spot where things are working. So we're going to leave those alone, and we're going to try to learn from those. Like, what did you do? How did you get your community on board? How'd you get your kids to comply? And then take some of those methodologies and then expand out into a larger effort throughout the district.
And I think the hope is that I know from the governor and from others that once, kids are very resilient. Once they get used to it and accept it, there has to be a buy-in. They accept it for what it is. I think a lot of the problems go away. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think time will solve the equation eventually, where once people get used to it and it shows us to be a little more productive, I think people will buy in even more so.
And that's the goal, right? To make kids more productive, more learning, better environment for learning.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about just a little bit about the president's plan to get rid of the Department of Education. How does that affect the school district?
We don't know yet. And the reason I say that is because for us, our federal funds is quite a bit. And we don't know what will impact, like, we have no idea what will impact, whether they will take it all actually away or will be taken away in portions based on, criteria from the government. So at this point, if we were to lose all of our federal funding, it'd be detrimental.
Yeah, I mean, especially in urban districts, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's crazy to even think about what could happen if you lose all federal funding. That's not acceptable. We can't do that.
No, we can't. We can't afford that.
No, absolutely not. Superintendent, thank you so much for your time for this first go round. There's going to be other issues in the district, I'm sure, that we'll talk in the future, but I really do appreciate your time today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's Jim. If you'd like to be part of this podcast as an advertiser, get a hold of us at jimreithunleashed@gmail.com, and we have rates to match your budget. Trust me. jimreithunleashed@gmail.com. It's time now for our Back in the Day segment, and this is a segment that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. It's three really good friends of mine that we met professionally back in the early 80s when we were doing radio news. And to put it in perspective for those of you listening to the podcast, back in those days, in my opinion, 80 to 2000 is the golden age of media coverage in the Syracuse area. So there were, at that time, there were 4 TV stations with news departments. There was WHEN and WSYR with really healthy news departments. I mean, we had 13 people in our news department, and we had a sports department. And there were 2 newspapers, 2 separate staffs, Post-Standard, Herald Journal. It's not like that today, unfortunately, and that's to the detriment of us all, especially as consumers of news. So back in the early 80s, which was, of course, the salad days of my youth, WHEN was our major competitor, and they had a staff that if you look at the people who were on that staff, you won't believe it. Okay. And three of them are here with us right now. Dan Cummings is here. Christie Casiano is with us, as is Dave Bullard. How are you all?
Oh, I can't wait to
Fabulous.
reminisce. I'm doing okay.
So, back in those days, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed to me like we competed very, very hard against each other, and yet could see each other on Friday night at Riley's.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I always said that Syracuse was a really like a relatively kind media market. You know, you'd hear stories about in like places like New York City where, you know, a competitor might cut your audio cable or something. But around here, if the batteries in your machine died and I had extra batteries, you could use it. Or I'd let you use my machine when I was done, right? TV guys would let themselves borrow each other's batteries or cables or even a tape just to get through because we didn't feel like we didn't need to teach you up at the event, right? We wanted to go out and compete fairly.
Correct. But
That's right.
that stopped as soon as Bill Carey insisted on another scoop. So Bill, the cooperation was good until the other guys beat you at SYR.
Yeah. Well, that's
Although I did not get in trouble, Ron Lombard, who eventually became my news director at News Channel 9, also worked in radio news and was a competitor. And there were times where he did not have a car. And I actually let him ride with me to next press event. And Bill Carey found out about it, wasn't happy, but then I explained to him, Bill, come on, what was he working for, SEN then? I'm trying to remember what
No,
Probably
he was at
SEN.
SYR.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
was
if
he
he didn't have a
But
car,
it
then
was before
he was at SEN.
WSYR.
Yeah, he was at
Before
SEN.
SYR.
Yeah.
He
So
couldn't
if
afford
he
a
had
car. He was
worked
at
for
SEN.
WSYR, there's no way he would allow me to give a ride in the car. But that's the way we were. We took care of each other. We would have a lot of fun in the field. Sometimes we'd pull pranks on each other. I can remember going to the courthouse at WHEN radio reporter, and I was running late. And there was a case that Bill Carey said, you got to get out there. They're about to sentence this person. Oh, I go flying in there. I run down the hall. There's Andy Brigham from News Channel 9. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, you shouldn't have run. I'm like, why, Andy? It's over with. You missed the whole thing. I'm crying. Oh, Bill's going to be so mad at me. He did not want to get Bill Carey mad at missing a story. And he starts laughing. He goes, I'm just kidding. Because they haven't even started yet. But those were the kinds of things that we would do to each other. We would just have a lot of fun out in the field.
And Andy had a pack of cigarettes in his pocket, which was on camera all the time.
Right. we pulled one mean prank on you guys at SYR once. There was a day when you had 3 full-time staff members put in their notices on the same day. You had a morning duo of a husband and wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your midday person was going to they were going to Texas, I guess, and the midday person left to go work for Mike Bragman. And we got talking about it, Bill and I, and it felt a little like a funeral.
Ooh.
So what do you do at a funeral?
Oh, dear.
And the question arose, do they make black roses?
Oh.
So Bill had me call a florist, and I said, do you have black roses? And the woman on the other side of the call just started laughing. She says, oh, this is a joke for somebody, isn't it? I said, well, it's a joke for us. I'm not sure it's going to be a joke there. So had him make up 3 black roses and a card that said, so sorry, our condolences at your great loss, 62 WHEN, and send it over. Jack Sheehan was the news director then. And we knew it was pretty easy to get Jack's goat. Jack kind of lived on that emotional edge.
Yeah.
So we knew he exploded because about a week later, Sheehan had to run downtown for a late news conference at the Public Safety Building. And Tony Rizzo from our staff was in the elevator with him. Lucky for Jack, Tony was suffering from a severe cold and was as doped up as Tony Rizzo ever gets because Tony can bring it. But Sheehan just lays into him. And the funny thing is, Tony didn't even know about the roses. He said,
Oh,
you
dear.
unprofessional, that, this and that. Oh my Lord. And poor Tony goes, I don't know what
I don't know what you're
happened
talking
here.
And that was Rich Kamanchak and Carol Ann Stripple were the two people who the husband and
Yes.
wife who left. In fact, when
Ah.
Rich left, I got his job in the morning as the co-anchor and reporter. So
Kamanchak.
John Butler was our news director back then, and he went to KMOX with Tom Langmeyer when he left. But you guys had Bill Carey and you three. You had what Jules, right? What's Jules' last name?
Jules Coleman.
Jules Coleman.
Coleman.
You had that voice, Jules Coleman's voice.
Coleman.
So, I saw Christie the most probably in the field because we covered courts together, and I covered the county government. But I do have a Dave Bullard story. And when this is when you were with Channel 5, and you hadn't been there very long, and we were doing a story when they redid that little pocket park right next to Clinton Square on the other side on Salina Street. They were redoing it, and you came up to me, and we're talking like we always did, and I said, so I think you had been at Channel 5 for like 6 months or whatever. I said, so how are you doing? And you said, you know what? I miss radio because you're a radio guy, and I'm a radio guy. And Christie and Dan, you're both best known, of course, for the television work that you did, but you both started in radio. I mean, we're all radio people, and I think we all mourn the fact that radio is what it is now, and it's really a shame.
It is a shame. I was looking in our newsroom, and Dad, this because it's thin. Newsrooms are very thin. Even television newsrooms aren't as healthy as they used to be. The other night, it was at 11 o'clock, about to go on the air, and I was thinking about radio newsrooms, how many more people there were in our newsroom back in the 80s than there are today in a television newsroom.
Yeah.
During the day or even at night. It was incredible. I'm so grateful that I got to experience the glory days. They're never coming back.
No.
They're never coming back. But what a blessing. I felt badly for the kids today. I call them kids because they look
they are
like
kids.
They're kids.
and Dan, Dan,
they're out there with their shooting their own stories, holding their camera, sticking the microphone in someone's face, and never experiencing what it was like to have someone, or their own photographer, coming back to a staff where the newsroom is jammed with editors, producers, that they never get to experience that. I felt kind of badly for them, but grateful for me.
And look at the people. Look at the people, Dan, that were reporters back then. I mean, look at the years and years of experience of the reporters back then.
Yeah, and you learned from those people too. We've dropped Bill Carey's name. We could drop it all day because he was the best. He was the best. And you learned, and the thing that I always, when you talk about mourning the salad days of radio, I always, felt that learning to write news on deadline and do it well in radio prepared all of us for television. And the fact that when they're coming out of college now, they don't get that experience of being forced basically to cover a multiple of stories in a given day, get it right, get it tight, get it back to the newsroom and move on to the next one. That type of on deadline broadcast news writing is kind of a thing of the past. And it was thanks to local, and I underscore local radio news that made it happen.
Absolutely. You couldn't be more right. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had to pump something out on extreme deadline for some other thing, and because of, I always said when I taught broadcast journalism writing, I put 3 words on the board, and it was on for every class. Writing is thinking. The last thing you do when you write is you put words on paper, right? Because you have to think, you have to organize, and from that organization flows the story. We guys, Dan, Christie, you guys remember. If you covered a story, you had to write 5 versions of it with 5 different sound bites, right? You didn't have time. When I was anchoring middays, I had to write all of Jules's stuff for him. That was 20 pieces of sound while I was doing my own anchoring. So you had to crank, and the sensation was, as you wrote the story over and over again, it got shorter because you started to learn it. But when I worked at the State Fair, there was this sudden announcement that Troy Waffner was being made the director. We got 1 hour's notice. And they said, Dave, we need you to write a press release now. So I sprint back to my desk, and in about 20, and they just said, listen, you got 3 hours. I said, give me 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And in 20, 25 minutes, I had something, not just a basic announcement, but the full enchilada. And they'll get me like, what? I said, dude, I write 50 to 60 press releases every summer for the fair. I crank this stuff out because we learned it.
Right.
Bill
Yes.
taught us. It was a necessity. If you were ever going to do your job and not get fired, you had to do it.
Yeah.
And let's talk about live hits, because that was the most exciting part of my job. And I know for a lot of you, the same thing. When something happened, because of the immediacy of radio, because of the ability to, with a big story, to break into whatever programming was on, you want to talk about the pressure being on. So I was sitting in a courtroom when Billy Blake got up and ran across the courtroom and smacked John Duncan in his face. I thought he was going out the window of the second floor to get away. So at that moment, you're sitting there thinking, what did I just see? And then I'm thinking, Butler's going to kill me if I don't get this on the air in 5 minutes. Right. And there was a little room in the courthouse kind of set aside for us, for the media. And they had a payphones in there, but they weren't, I don't think you had to put money in them, but they were like two little phone booths in that room. And so, you run down there and you stop for a minute, like you said, because you have to think about what you're going to say on the air. And then you call in, you say, we got to break in, and Butler's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, Billy Blake just smacked John Duncan, and here we go. So it's that immediacy and that rush that you got from doing that kind of thing, because you knew that you were informing people. This was an important thing. This was an important story, and let's go. And, that's gone now, especially in radio. If we get a giant blizzard, I don't even know what's going to happen now with news coverage.
It's kind of sad, isn't it?
It is sad.
Yeah.
Right. But everyone has gotten out of social media. So they'll get
that's
their
true too,
alerts
right? Yes.
they'll get their alerts on X, and they'll get their alerts on, even
Also-
police departments
also
are
sad.
doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Also
It is
sad.
so sad.
Yeah.
Well, what they've done is they've adapted to the destruction of local media.
That's correct. Yeah.
Jim,
And
I'll
here's
tell
the
you
thing.
yeah.
Dave and I were talking about this at lunch last week, and I mentioned the fact that and I started in Ithaca when I did really, really local news for the first time before I came to Syracuse. And down there and up here with Bill, we were at all four of us and countless others that you've mentioned. We showed up at Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, school board meetings, school board committee meetings, if it was important, Common Council committee meetings. All those radio people you mentioned were there with our individual microphones and notepads. And sometimes the stories weren't of great consequence, but it mattered because we were there. And the local politicians, the local elected officials and appointed officials knew that if you're there at their board meeting, at their committee meeting, that actually they may need to behave a little better. They may need to make policy a little more smartly. And they may not get away with the things that they probably do now because nobody's covering these meetings, even the little, and just the fact that local radio was there, whether it was Ithaca, Auburn, Syracuse, it mattered to the viewers, listeners, obviously, and I think it mattered to the people in power who are making decisions.
Well, and I think, one of the things that we've lost also is on the other side of the microphone, where governments, shut out the press. They don't want to talk to the press. And I was thinking about that the other day. I just had reason to think of, you guys will remember the name Norm Andrzejewski.
Yeah.
You might remember him from Operation Southern Comfort, but we remember him as the guy who would talk to us about hospital issues at the State Health Systems Agency.
Absolutely.
Remember him, Joe Barry, State Department of Health, right? And there were others who were, Dick Brickweddy at DEC.
Yes,
people who were empowered to talk to us.
Right.
And now government doesn't want to talk to us. So
That's
even if
very true.
even if we could have 37 reporters now, and what you're doing is you're waiting for a 3-line statement by email from some toad in Albany, to tell you something that you already know, or that it ducks the question entirely. The accountability has failed on both ends of the scale.
Right. Even with police departments, you see that. Remember the day we used to be able to call CID, Criminal Investigation Division,
Yeah.
right? Call up and talk to a detective and ask him what
Dick Hallman. Talk to Dick Hallman, right?
Right. Now you're not allowed to do that.
No.
Yeah, everything has to go through the spokesperson, whoever that might be on a given day.
Right. True.
And they may or may not get to you in a timely fashion. Or, just the other day, there was a train accident with the Manlius Police Department. I had a heck of a time trying to get information on that. And then I finally did. And then when I did, any follow-up information, check our social media pages.
Right, exactly. Right.
Like what?
Yeah, there's no more Rod Carr.
Social media pages.
You can't interrogate a social media post.
Exactly.
That's the problem, right?
I got a lot of stories out of legislature committee meetings. Many stories. Now
Loved
there's
committee
zero.
meetings. Yep. Loved going to
Zero.
committee meetings. Because you'd find little stuff that nobody ever thought of.
That's true. And it helped to inform the people about what was going on in their area. And now there's just and it's intentional that it's all gone now, and it's really a shame. So you guys were there from 81 to 85, 81 to 84, around there. And then you went into your various careers and did television for a very long time. And Christie is, of course, still very active. I don't know how you do it, but you're still doing it, and you're still doing
grateful,
it exceptionally well.
She carries the torch for the rest of us.
Yes, she does.
I have a question. Me coming into this, I started in 2005 at Clear Channel. And when I started, WHEN and WSYR were under the same roof.
Right.
Obviously not at this time. Where you weren't was it under the same management?
No.
Okay.
Oh yeah, they were you were owned by Park Communications, right?
HEN was owned by a penurious billionaire named Roy Park, who had a mansion in Ithaca, a collection of Rolls Royces. He collected Rolls Royces and live peacocks on his property.
And paid his people pennies.
Great story. Park held its annual meeting at the Liverpool Holiday Inn at the time, the one up by the Thruway exit.
Yep.
It's changed hands 27 times since then. To get ready for his visit, we repainted everything, we cleaned everything up, we got it all ready. He's right around the corner from us. We're on Old Liverpool Road. Son of a bitch never showed up. Not once. I never saw him in the building in the 5 years I was there.
No kidding. We were owned by 3 or 4 different companies in my time there, and ended up with Clear Channel, and they cleaned house, and then now they're nothing. It's all satellite radio now. But
Dave, you were news director at SYR when I was there, right?
Yeah, Dave was. Yep.
We overlapped.
So it was
till I was fired. Yeah, sure.
Well,
we all got that.
Not the two people. Not Christie and Dan.
No.
You guys were never fired.
I was fired at WOLF Radio, my very first radio job, because they went automated. And they fired everybody. And I remember Rick Gary and Ron B they were mad because, of course, no notice at all. Just, we saw these big machines coming in. We thought, what are those things? We didn't know that they were automating the radio station, getting ready of all their talent. And at that point, they were about to go with a syndicated show, which was brand new at the time. No one ever heard of this.
Yep.
So, and they did it in a very sneaky fashion. And I remember Rick and Ron grabbing tons of albums out of the closet, going outside and just flinging them like saucers. And calling the television stations to come on down, and they sang Happy Trails.
Oh, that's perfect. That is perfect.
Really, Rick Gary? That doesn't sound like Rick.
I'm sure there was some expletives thrown in there.
There are a few expletives, yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though, that links Christie's story just then and Dave's Roy Park story. At least Roy Park, such as he was, I believe he lived in suburban Ithaca, Cayuga Heights, right? They've named the school for communications after him. He did have a lot of money at Ithaca College, but at least he was a local, quote unquote, local owner. He was a central upstate New Yorker who owned local radio stations and others. And he was here and he listened to us. He may not have shown up for that event, Dave, but he listened to his stations and he knew what was on. He might not have paid that much, but he listened.
He ordered WRRB, which was the #1 country station in the market. He ordered them to change formats to beautiful music because that's what he wanted to listen to in his office.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
but he was local, and how many
I never heard
stations-
that story.
They're not owned locally anymore. And I
Oh, no.
actually just finished reading a book by former President Bill Clinton about his life after leaving office. And in there, as he harangues about a lot of things, he certainly drives home the point. And he mentioned the absence of local radio and television ownership. He said it's what led to, in many ways, he believes, the denigration of the public culture and also of news coverage for everybody, including presidential campaigns, where there aren't enough locally owned stations for local journalists asking questions of their local officials and federal officials.
That's
and
right.
he specifically called out the absence of local ownership of local radio and television.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. And this has been an awesome trip down memory lane, and I appreciate the three of you very much. You know, I love you guys, and we're hooked in a way that will never be broken. So thank you for joining us. Take care of yourselves, and maybe we'll do this again.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate
I would
it.
love that. Love
Thank
you guys.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our trip down memory lane as it relates to news and radio news specifically. But the point that I wanted to get across, except for, you know, the stories that we told, is the fact that it hurts the consumer when there's fewer outlets to get news. And now, as Christie talked about, government is really hesitant to talk to the news media at all. And it's certainly not the way that it was back in the day, as they say. I also appreciate the superintendent of schools coming out for Syracuse City, because of the issues that are at hand, and we'll have him back on again, Anthony Davis. He seemed like to be a very nice guy. Short answers, but it was our first time together, so we'll have him on again when there's going to be other issues to talk about as it relates to the school district for sure. So that'll do it for number 19. Certainly, I'm glad you're here. I really appreciate the support that you've given us. Producer Bill, we want to put another plug in for subscribing.
Yes, please go to the YouTube channel. Go to your Apple, Spotify, whatever way you listen to and consume this podcast, and make sure you hit the subscribe button, because that helps just show us what kind of numbers we have. We're in about the 6,000 range for downloads right now, which is, for grassroots, this is pretty good. Hopefully this year we'll be able to amp up some stuff and do some live stuff. Maybe do a roundtable with some of those media folks as a live thing, because I've heard a lot of your stories working with you for so long, and you won't hear those kind of stories anymore, because
right.
there's like, even when I started, really WSYR was the only radio news, in that early 2000.
Right.
And like when I asked in the interview, I didn't, kind of realize at that point that WHEN and WSYR were two entities at that time.
Yep.
But it makes sense, because when I went and worked in television after we were done, it was the same kind of thing. I would go out and shoot something, and there would be a photographer from, I was working for Channel 3 and 5, there was a photographer from 9, and there would always be, hey, do you need anything? There was never a sense of us against you,
right.
Me against you. It was always, we'll get the news out and let people make their decision that way. But everybody I had a great time in media. It was so much fun.
Yes, and I did too. And we competed hard against one another, HEN and SYR. We really did. And we were gracious to one another when somebody needed help. And we developed friendships, of course. And, Dave is still a friend of mine. Dan and Christie are friends of mine. So those days are gone for good, and they're never coming back. And it's really a shame. But it was really a golden time in the local media, and it was a pleasure and a real honor to be a part of it, quite frankly. And some very, very, very good people have come through this market, especially in the sports realm. I mean, Dave Pash and Dave O'Brien were both on WSYR. Dan Horde was on WSYR. So, we've put some people out there, and so has HEN, especially in local television. So I miss those days. They were fun while they lasted, for sure. But it was great
Who made the decision to take you from reporting and put you in the talk show realm? Was that Lurch?
Troy.
Okay.
His name was Troy. I don't remember his last name. And his His wife's name was Dina Carroll. Troy gave me my own show. I was news director in 1999. Hated that job, and then got my own show in, I think, 2000.
Yes, it was right after. I remember listening to some 9/11 stuff.
Yeah.
So it was right around that.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, okay? And God willing, we're all back at it next time on the Jim Reith Show Unleashed podcast.